Well, welcome everyone. I really appreciate you being here. I know there were some people who couldn't make it, but they'll watch the recording later. I promise it's not just the three of you that's going to read all 23 applications. I'm really hoping if I'm doing my math right, everyone will be reading about four. So hopefully it's not too much. Um, but thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to be a grant reader for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. It's a very long mouthful to say 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant every time. So you'll hear me say 21st Century or 21st CCLC throughout today's training. So, hey, look, I remembered to push record. Always proud of myself for remembering that. Please just keep yourself muted unless you have a question. You are welcome to unmute yourself if you have a question. But other than that, please keep yourself muted so that everyone can hear. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat box. Or like I said, if you have a pressing question about what we're talking about, you're welcome to unmute yourself and interrupt me. And then this will be recorded. I will send everyone the link to this meeting and a summary of all the information. I'll do that probably tomorrow afternoon. We have to get the video prepped before I can send that out to everyone. So on today's agenda, we are going to firstly go over a brief overview of the 21st Century Grant as a whole. When we get into the out of school time world, sometimes things work a little differently than during the regular school day. So there are some things to let you guys know about. We are also going to discuss, obviously, the grant reading process, what those steps will look like for being a grant reader. And then the application content. We'll go over kind of what those applications will look like, what types of questions there are, so that hopefully you guys are all set up for success to be able to score and read these grants. Which also, I tend to use the phrases grant reading and grant scoring interchangeably. So if you hear me call you a scorer or a reader, or you hear me talk about reading this or scoring this, those are the same thing in this context. So the 21st Century Grant is a federal grant. It is Title 4B of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So I think most of the people currently on the call are USBE employees, so you've probably heard of Title I. That's the one most people are familiar with, but there's actually several titles that all are each their own program in that act. So this is Title 4B. So these are federal dollars. They come to our state annually on July 1st. I, along with the fiscal team and everyone, manage that grant and give that money to subgrantees after they're awarded in the competition process. So the focus areas for this grant, there are three focus areas. One being academic enrichment, so helping students meet those academic core standards in their state. All 50 states and 4 US territories also have the 21st Century Grant. So obviously those core standards and some of those things, the way the grant runs will look a little different state to state. So it's kind of interesting how it's individualized. So meeting those core standards, aligning their program with the school day, hopefully working together with school day programming to best serve students and collaborate. The next focus area is additional services enrichment activities. This could look like learning to play soccer, learning to code a computer program, doing arts activities, playing a game in the gym. I always encourage every after-school staff that I work with, I remind them that every single activity they do should have a learning objective. But that learning objective might be a bit more informal than during traditional school day classroom settings. The learning objective of an activity might be that we're going to express our feelings more, or we're going to learn how to dribble a soccer ball. Today, we're going to learn how to safely use an oven in this cooking activity. As a whole, in general, we do want them aligned with core standards, but we do see a lot of other enrichment activities that don't look like the regular school day. So as you're going through and scoring these and you're reading the plans, you're reading their budgets, you might see some things that seem a little unusual, but we have to remember that in out of school time, we're doing a lot of really broad enrichment activities. And then the last one is offering families of students served by community learning centers opportunities for literacy and related educational development. So this is where some of those adult education components come in. We want to, these dollars can be used for family engagement nights. Usually a lot of grantees do a couple of family engagement nights a year and call it their adult education component. They're serving families, but we really want to see specific services offered to not just the students who attend the out of school time program, but their whole family as well. And I should specify when I say out of school time and after school, I am meaning those somewhat the same. Out of school time is the umbrella term we usually use when we refer to after school and summer programming, because this grant can be used for both. So some grantees are only applying to run an after school program, and some of them are applying for after school and summer. We also have some counties that are moving, some school districts that are moving to a 4-day school week. Like Wendover, I know Paiute School District has talked about that. And so some of them are applying to run a Friday childcare program, and they're going to do all of these same things, but on Friday, and then a couple hours additionally. So we will move to so this is the grant competition cycle. So the 21st Century Grant is a 5-year grant. The funds they are applying for is their annual amount. So you'll see in their budgets, they're going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $400,000. That's for 1 year. And then the next 4 years will give them that same amount. So this year we have a little over $900,000 available for new grantees. The rest of the money is being used to fund those grantees in years 2 through 5. So the funding for this school year does technically start July 1st. You'll see on the schedule a little later that I do not intend on having all of these applications scored and awarded by July 1st. But this is a reimbursement grant, so it works out okay. Like I said, the annual minimum they can apply for is $100,000, with the maximum being $400,000. So in the first 3 years of the grant, let's say someone applies for 100 and, well, let's call it 100 to make the math easy. They apply for $100,000. So year 1, they get 100,000. Year 2, they get 100,000. Year 3, they get 100,000. Then year 4, it reduces to 75%. So they would get $75,000. And then year 5, they get $50,000. That is to promote sustainability practices, to encourage all of these grantees to not be relying on this grant. We get a lot of grantees that they're applying every 5 years, and this is their main funding stream, which isn't inherently bad, but we do want to encourage other more sustainable funding practices. So that's why that is. And then applicants can apply for up to 6 program sites. So for a school district, that might look like the school district is the applicant organization. Then they're applying for 6 different school sites under one application. This grant is open to community-based organizations. So that might look like a Boys and Girls Club or YMCA. We also have a county on the books. Salt Lake County is a grantee. We have municipalities who apply. Charter schools, faith-based organizations, they're all able to apply. So you'll see a lot of applicants that are not just school districts. Allowable and unallowable costs. We'll go over this briefly so you guys can get a feel. Staffing costs, so salaries and benefits are allowable. Supplies, materials, and equipment. This is the supplies and materials is really where I was getting into the out of school time field. We do a lot of things that might seem a little random because we're doing a lot of random activities. We're using supplies in ways that might not be normal to do activities with kids where they can learn things. My go-to example is always spaghetti and marshmallows. The fiscal managers here, Clint, sometimes he'll email me and be like, hey, they applied for this. They are getting reimbursed this really random thing. Can you give me some context? Like I always say, spaghetti noodles and marshmallows. That's a really common activity in the out of school time world to learn about different components of engineering and architecture. You stick those raw spaghetti noodles together with marshmallows and make a little tower. So there's lots of really sometimes random things in people's budgets that might seem odd, but once you hear about their lesson they're planning on using it for, it makes perfect sense. Then professional development and training. So they can use this money to go to conferences, to hire external technical assistance providers, things like that. I would say these three are the biggest uses of these funds are for salaries and then supplies. So they are allowed to use it for cell phone usage and mileage, so transportation. If they're a Boys and Girls Club, so they're not at a school site and they need to get kids from the school to their club, they can pay for a bus or a van to transport them, things like that. As well as mileage for training if you need staff to drive to the school district headquarters for a training or something. Pre-approved field trips with direct link to program goals and outcomes. So I usually approve those. Food costs, so they can provide and should provide really a healthy snack every day. And then some provide dinners. And we do recommend they get on the child nutrition program so that it doesn't take up so much of their budget. Family engagement activities, like we discussed before, those also can sometimes seem a little random what supplies are being used for those. Things that are not allowable, so capital expenses like building a new building or something, taxes on purchases, anything considered purely entertainment that they're not putting a learning objective to, which I try and tell everyone, just put a learning objective to everything. I promise you can do it. You can find a learning objective in any activity you do. Food for meetings or trainings. Sometimes they'll try and like buy pizza for the training they're doing. We really want to make sure the funds are going toward the kids. Candy and soda, unless it is being used somehow in the activity, like the marshmallows. Incentives or toys, gift cards, gaming systems. So if they're buying things for the prize box, they can't use these funds. Grant award responsibilities, we'll go over this really briefly. They need to attend the orientation. They need to document time and effort. So basically meaning anyone who is working for this grant, if their time is split between work for this grant and work for different programs, then the salaries from 21st Century should only be paying for the portion of their work for this program. So they need to document that and send it to me. Well, they submit it to Utah Grants. Follow allowable and unallowable costs. They collect data on student achievement. There are a couple different reports and assessments they do throughout the year, including their 21 APR federal reporting system. That's the data that the Department of Education, they create a report, they send it to Congress, then Congress decides how much money we get. So it's really important that they're filling out those reports. Annual continuation applications. They participate in technical assistance with our contracted technical assistance provider, the Utah After School Network. And then they need to be reporting their progress to the community. We're really encouraging everyone in the out of school time field to do community engagement and really let their communities know what it is they're doing in program. So that is the grant itself. Does anyone have any questions about that? I just wanted to make sure everyone had that context. Okay, well, we will move into the grant reading process. So important dates to remember. So this Thursday is when you will receive the applications. They will be loaded into a Google Drive, and I will give you the link to that Google Drive in the follow-up email after this meeting when I send it out tomorrow. Don't expect them like first thing Thursday morning. We're still working on, there needs to be a little bit of reformatting. I'll show you later. So we're working on that. It might not be until Thursday afternoon. June 28th is when you should have all of your individual scoring done. So you'll get hopefully 4 applications. You'll read them all, score them, get that done by the 28th. So that from the 28th to the 10th is when the group grant reading meetings can happen. You'll be put in a group with 2 other grant readers. You each score individually, and then you'll meet in your group, and that will be scheduled by your group. I don't see any reason we all need to be meeting at the exact same time. So your group will schedule that meeting whenever works for the 3 of you to go over everything. And I will say, if the 3 of you don't want to wait that long and you want to get it done real quick and have your group meeting early, like June 20th or whatever, that's fine with me. By all means, do whatever you want to do. Just like let me know if you're getting it done early. You will need to fill out a conflict of interest and confidentiality form. So basically, I will send you the link to the form in the follow-up email. You can just click, I listed out all of this year's applicants, and you can click which ones you might potentially have a conflict of interest with. If you work for a certain school district, that's a conflict of interest. If you have any sort of financial gain from any applicant, certain applicant getting this money, that's a conflict of interest. It will explain it all in the form. So you'll click that and figure it out. I will use that information to help make the groups. You know, if you have a conflict of interest with these 3 applicants, then I will make sure that you are not scoring them, and I'll assign you some different ones. It also just has a confidentiality thing for you to initial, saying that you're not going to talk about these applications and everything with other people. And that's really it. It should just take like a minute or 2 to fill that out. The grant reading process. So this will all be done online. I'll give you all the documents online. You'll fill out your forms online, so you can do it from wherever, whenever. As I said earlier, there will be 3 readers in each group. So you'll each score it based on the rubric, and there are 244 points possible. Last year it ranged from, oh, I don't know. We had a range from like 100 to 190-ish. There's a pretty big range. So grant readers will be assigned a number. So you'll notice on the final group scoring sheet, which I will show you later, there will be a column for each reader. You'll have a number. That's so that when a lot of the applicants ask for their scores and comments back, so that I can give them those scores and comments without them knowing who actually scored. They'll just know the number for each reader. And then all applications will also be given a number, just so that I can keep track of them on all the different formats. So individual scoring. So each reader will read and score the applications. You'll use the rubric in the reference application, and then you'll fill it out in the individual scoring form. You'll get emailed a copy of your response, so a copy of all your scores, and you'll need that when you get to the group scoring meeting. So I will show you all those forms. So this is the conflict of interest form. You can fill that out. It shouldn't take long. I'll send that out in the email tomorrow. This is what the individual scoring form looks like. I'm not going to send it out quite yet. I'm going to send it out on Thursday because I still need to fix it. This still has all of last year's questions and I made some tweaks, so I'm still finishing the scoring forms. But this is generally what it still will look like. So you'll put your name and the organization name. You'll fill out one of these individual scoring forms for each of your applications. So you'll fill out for this individual scoring sheet 4 times. You'll put your email address, organization name, the program sites, your reader number, and then the application number. And you'll have all of that information. Then there are competitive points and narrative points. And I will get into all that in a second. So you'll click, the competitive points are all yes or no. They either got them or they didn't. So you'll click yes, they got the total points, or no, they did not get the points. And then there is a spot toward the end of that section for you to write comments. You don't need to write a comment for every single question. I would probably, prioritize kind of the ones that they didn't meet, writing a comment about that, about what you read in their application that earned them that score. Then we get into the application narrative questions. There are 13 questions with some sub-questions in there, I guess 13 chunks of narrative questions. So we have a needs assessment, project design, we'll get into all this. So you'll write the possible points here. The narrative questions are all worth different points. A lot of them are worth 10, a couple are worth 20, there's a 15, a 5, they're all worth, so make sure you're double checking how much the points are worth before you write it in and make your decision. If you thought the points were worth 5 and you gave them a 4, but it was really out of 10, so that should have been more like an 8. You'll just write the score in this short answer text box. And then once again, toward the end, there's a section for comments. So any extreme scores, anything that's like really low or really high, needs a comment. But once again, you don't need to write a comment for every single one. I won't be upset if you did. You're welcome to write a comment for every single one. I'm sure the applicants would appreciate it, but you don't need to. So this is the individual scoring form. Once again, you'll fill one of these out for every single application you do. So 4 times. And then, so you'll fill this out before June 28th. I will get a copy of it. You will get a copy of it. And then once you and your group decide when to meet, you'll meet together virtually. You will pick one person to be I don't remember what I called it. The discussion facilitator and the technology facilitator. So one person to just kind of keep everyone on track, make sure you're moving along during your meeting. And then the other person, the technology facilitator, will be the one to fill out the group scoring sheet. It gets kind of confusing if everyone's in there trying to fill out their stuff all at the same time. So that's why we really suggest that in your group meeting, designate one person to fill out this form. So once again, I will make a few small tweaks to this form, adding in some questions, but this is generally what it's going to look like. You'll come in, it will have the name of the organization up here at the top. And then your reader number, you'll have that. And then we have application 1, application 2, moving on along. So you will take the scores, well, you'll discuss them. So the discussion facilitator will say, okay, what did everyone put for competitive points 1? number one, submitted jointly by an LEA and at least one public and private eligible, And then you can all say what you put. They'll put them in here. And then if there is a discrepancy of more than 3 points, so let's say well, these are all 3 or 0. So on these, so let's say this portion of the needs assessment is 15 points. Let's say that Lizzie scored it a 14 and James scored them a 6 out of 15. That's quite a large discrepancy. Anything over 3 or 4 points, you really need to talk about. So the things to talk about during that time is making sure that everyone understood what the question was asking. Everyone has the same understanding of the question, that everyone understands what the rubric is asking, and that everyone understands the answer the applicant gave. If after making sure you're all on the same page there, you still have a huge discrepancy, you might just need to keep talking about it and figure out, why does one person think this is a really high score and one person thinks this is a pretty low score? You should be at least somewhat similar. Like I said, anything within 3 to 4 points is usually fine. Obviously these like 5-point ones, if one of you scores a 4 and one of you scores at a 1, maybe chat about that. So you'll each, after that discussion, if any of these scores need to be changed, the technology facilitator can go in and change it. So these scores will vary. These scores will not vary as much because, like I said earlier, the competitive points are yes or no. They either get the full amount of points or they get 0. Whereas the narrative scores they're on a range. They can get anywhere in there. And these ones, if you would like to do a half point, you are allowed to. If you want to give them a 3.5 out of 5 or something like that, you can if you would like. The meeting, your group scoring meeting, might take 2 to 3 hours. It might be faster if you guys are just fast and don't have a lot of discrepancies and move through them quickly. It might take a while if you have a lot of discrepancies between you. It just kind of depends. So you'll put in all your scores here. They will, the form will do all the work for us. So let's do So you'll see it averaged, it totals the scores. So it totals your priority points up here. And then it totals the narrative points. So this section right here. And then your application total. And then the document will average them. So this green score will just be the average of these orange scores. And the green score is the score I will use to determine who gets funded or not. I will just go through the list and pick the top scores, and those people will be funded. And then at the end, so final comments. So after your discussion, if you have any additional comments to make on top of the comments from your individual scoring sheet, you can write them in this box. And then if there's partial funding available, would you recommend the project? Yes or no? And then that's it. So you would do that for all 4 of the organizations that you are scoring for. And then it will total them all down here. So any of the boxes that are colored on this sheet, you do not need to fill out. You're only filling in numbers where it's white. Okay, that was the really important part. Does anyone have any questions about that process? So we do the individual scoring first and then the group scoring. Okay, that's the general process. We're going to spend the rest of the time looking at the applications, what they look like, what parts there are, where do you find the rubrics, and all of that. So the general, well, I'll leave it here. Application components. So I always say to use the application reference doc as your guide. So when you come into, okay, so you'll get the link for this folder. And right here, the 21st Century Application Reference Packet. This is the document that I always say, just use this as your guide. This will tell you everything you need to know as an applicant and as a scorer. For you guys, you really want to start looking at page 20. Unfortunately, I was going to make another version and then I didn't get around to it. So the first 19 pages of this document, you guys don't need to look at. There won't be any like scores or anything in there. If you would like to, you can. It might provide you some helpful context if you want, but not necessary. It goes over the purpose of the grant cycle, what all the requirements are for the grant, resources. So this is where you will find the rubric. So we have competitive priorities, section 1. So the applicant organization needs to meet needs to meet these requirements. Then competitive points 2, all proposed program sites meet these requirements. Because remember, we have the applicant organization, and then they can apply for up to 6 sites. So these are, each individual site needs to meet these requirements to get each of these points. A couple that I've had questions on that I don't know if people know or not. The main one is this number 4. So the program staff includes a site coordinator that is out of ratio. So in the out of school time world, we normally have a position called a site coordinator. That's the person that's in charge of the after school program at that particular site, whether it be a school or a community-based place or whatever. Then there might be a handful of staff under them. There are priority points for having the site coordinator out of ratio, meaning when the program decides what is our capacity for enrollment, what is our capacity for how many children we can serve each day, they usually look at how many staff they have. They say we can do 15 kids for every staff member that we have. So when they get these, in order to get these points, it would mean that they're not counting their site coordinator when they figure that out. So if they have 1 site coordinator and 3 staff, then they would say, okay, 3 times 15 kids, we can serve 45 kids. Whereas if their site coordinator was in ratio, then they would be serving 60. This is the priority points because it allows for higher quality programming for the site coordinator to be doing things like going over data, having phone calls with parents, meeting with school day teachers. To have a site coordinator that has time for all of these non-direct service tasks improves program quality. So that's why there's points for that. So it's out of the ratio when we're talking about staff to child ratio. This number 7, I had a lot of questions about this one from applicants because it's new, so you might see some different things. It used to be a requirement that every single program had a low income rate of 40% or higher. In talking with the feds and what their requirements are, decided to make it so that's no longer a requirement, but is still significant priority points so that we can focus on those rural and low income areas. And then competitive points 3, so only one or more of the proposed sites needs to meet this in order for them to earn the points. So this one, all of their sites needed to have this to earn the points. This one, just one of them needs to have it in order to earn these points. These 3 sections of competitive points should be fairly easy for you to score. They literally in the application are just going to check the box that says yes or no, and you'll just go based off of that. The narrative questions, so this is page 23, this is where it gets more complicated for you guys as scorers. So there are 13 questions. So number 1 needs assessment, and they each have the scoring rubric right here following the question. So there's the overall question, and then some of them are divided into sub-questions. So this needs assessment, we have needs assessment A and needs assessment B. Their response might be, when it comes out in Qualtrics, it puts it all in one box. So their response is all going to be in one box, but it still needs to meet the answers for both of these questions. If it's in the Qualtrics form, it won't be separated out into A and B. So you'll have to keep both of these questions in mind when you read through their response. And like I said earlier, please pay attention to how many points each question is worth, because they're not all worth the same amount of points. And then you'll just go through the rubric. I'm not going to read through every single rubric here right now because there's 16 of them. But making sure that they meet all of these requirements, it would be helpful probably as readers. Each question has this application guidance. So kind of some suggestions or additional context for the applicants that might be useful for you as readers as well to read through the application guidance as you're scoring. And then, so we have project design. So these are the 2 biggest questions, the needs assessment and the project design. So this is the overall explanation of their programming. Then we have principles of effectiveness. If you want to read more about the specific principles of effectiveness, there's a link earlier in this document. But basically just making sure that their programming decisions are being made on evidence-based philosophies and curriculum, things like that. Program evaluation. In year 3 of the grant, they are required to perform a program evaluation. I always tell them best practice is to do it always, every year, but only on year 3 is it required. So they're required to provide the explanation for how they're going to do that evaluation, what data they're collecting. See, this doesn't have a C. There's a different version of this document, I think, that I sent out that this used to have a part C, which I got rid of and then turned into question 5. And I had some people asking if they needed to answer part C. So you might actually get some additional information in here that wasn't necessary. You can just ignore it. Question 5 is data reporting and continuous improvement. So this is asking all about how are they going to complete all of the reporting and assessments for this grant? And then more importantly, how are they going to utilize those reports and assessments in their programming? When they collect all this data and they give it to me and they give it to the feds, like that's great for me and the federal government to be able to use all the data, but the applicants and grantees themselves really should be utilizing all of this data to improve their own programs and identify their strengths and weaknesses. So that's why this was added. Academic achievement. So how are they helping students meet academic achievement? Program components, you'll see they should be selecting 3 of these and then writing about how they're going to incorporate them into their program. And then inclusion, so how are they going to meet students' needs who have different needs and including different stakeholders making students feel included. Family engagement, like we talked about, family engagement and serving the whole family is a big component of the grant. Travel and safety, like we said, they might be busing kids from the school to the program site if they don't run it at a school, or transportation for field trips, things like that. And then also just general safety while in program. Professional development, continuous improvement. And then continuation. So this goes back to that sustainability piece, that financial sustainability. How are they planning on continuing to run their program when the funding drops in years 4 and 5? And how are they hoping to continue it even after the grant ends? And then their budget. So here's the rubric for that. So that's where you'll find the rubrics, is in the application reference packet. Now I wanted to take a moment to show you what some of their applications might look like. You'll find their applications here. I will assign you to your grant reading group, and then you'll come and find the folder that you were assigned, and you'll find the application folders in there. They're not in there yet because I haven't assigned the groups yet. But for example, so you'll come into their folder. The first thing you want to find and review is their Qualtrics response. So this is where they submitted everything. So this should have the basics of their application. So you're looking for their Qualtrics response. If they didn't submit, okay, I'll just explain now. So I gave all the applicants 2 options. They could submit all of their questions, all of their answers straight into Qualtrics, copying and pasting everything in there, which is what they've usually done. But you'll see in a moment that it does not print, it does not submit, it does not give us a document that is easy to read. So I gave them all the option, if they wanted, to just type their questions into the application reference document and just submit that, upload it, so that it's easier to read. And this is the first year we've done that. So some people submitted them in Qualtrics and some people submitted them as an extra question, an extra document. So you might need to find that. Then their budget Excel form. So you'll see in their folder, it'll have a budget in there somewhere. Then their gap analysis form. Then they might have partnership letters from school principals or district officials, other community partners. Any sort of documentation that's needed for the priority points, and then any other optional documents. So if we go to Beacon, you'll see there's a handful of documents in here. Not every applicant is submitting exactly the same documentation. Some of them are submitting more than others. They're not all labeling them exactly the same way because they're not all submitting exactly the same document to support the same question. So you might need to like dig around for a bit. I will say, well, I'll open the Qualtrics response because as we said, start here. So you open the Qualtrics response. You can see this text is really small. But anywhere that you see a hyperlink, I have put that document into their folder. So anywhere you see a hyperlink and you're like, okay, I need to review that link, go to their folder and that same document will be in there. So you'll scroll down past the LEAs. So here's competitive point 62. So here's where you need to start looking. So yes or no for all of these. Oh, that is worded poorly. You can see they're just clicking yes or no if they have it, so it should be easy for you to do. And then you can see these boxes are really tiny and hard to read. That is why we are taking the time to revise them. like this. No one wants to read this. This is like 9-point font and it's not even single spaced. And I don't want to make you guys read that. So the wonderful Madeline here on our call is going through and making sure that they are all more legible. So for example, which one is it? American Prep. So there's an American Prep Qualtrics response. The American Prep Qualtrics response revised is the one that will be more legible. So Madeline went through and made it easier to read. So now it's 12-point and double spaced and hopefully easy for you to read and understand. But I wanted to show you one organization who I know took me up on my offer to upload it. So this is Ogden. Oh, that's not what I want. I don't want Ogden School District. I want Ogden Prep. Ogden Prep Academy. So we have their Qualtrics responses. You can see when I scroll down. Okay, they did not fill it out in here. They said, per an email from Savannah Hunt, we are uploading our completed Word document as opposed to copying and pasting our narrative questions. So I'm sorry that might make it a little annoying for you to have to now go find their answers, but I'm hoping in the long run it'll be easier for everyone. Next year, I want to have them not fill out Qualtrics at all. Upload everything to Utah Grants next year. So they have theirs labeled application packet. I saw some that were just labeled application. You might need to do a little sleuthing. If you realize they didn't copy and paste their responses into Qualtrics, you might need to do a little sleuthing to figure out which one is their application packet. They uploaded a PDF and a Word document just for like extra assurance, but you don't need to read both of them. So they put their answers just under each question. So instead of you having to read the box in Qualtrics, their answer is here underneath the question in this application. In the long run, I think next year will be better, but I like that they're then able to make subheadings and number things and bullet things. Instead of in Qualtrics, it's just one big blob of words. These hopefully are easier for you to read. Existing resources, program remedies, and that's the end of their question. So that's their answer to question 1 versus American Prep that we just looked at. Theirs was still in Qualtrics. And then their project plan will be part of question 2. Their gap analysis is part of their budget. Their budget template is part of their budget. And then there's a couple other documents in here about their operations and their job description for their site coordinator. That's probably their proof for having it be full-time. So that is it. That is all the documents to review. And then, like I said, you'll use the rubric, put your scores in the individual score sheet, and then during the group meeting, put the scores in the group meeting sheet. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or thoughts? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here. I will send out a follow-up email tomorrow with all of the necessary links and information, as well as the recording to this meeting if you want to go back and read it. And you can fill out the conflict of interest form when you get that email tomorrow. So thank you all for being here, and thank you all for your help with this. I know for many of you, this is a large extra thing to suddenly have on your plate, so I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.